Fleet Admiral Zix Thala stood on the bridge of the Void Render, watching the stars through the massive viewing port. The ship stretched out for over a kilometer in every direction, its dark metal hull covered in weapon ports and shield generators. This was the pride of the HFY hegemony, the most feared warship in the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the HFY had ruled the galaxy with ships like this one. Their empire stretched across 10,000 star systems, and every species they met had the same choice: join the hegemony or be destroyed. Most chose to join after seeing what HFY warships could do. The bridge was filled with the quiet hum of advanced technology. Officers with purple skin and forearms worked at control stations, their large black eyes focused on displays showing data from across the galaxy. The HFY were tall, thin beings who had evolved on a peaceful world where the biggest predator was the size of a house cat. They had never known real war until they built their first starship and discovered how easy it was to conquer other peaceful species. "Admiral," said Commander Velthar, approaching with a data pad in one of his four hands, "long-range sensors have detected an unknown vessel in Sector 47. It appears to be from an uncontacted species." Zix Thala took the data pad and studied the information. The ship was small, maybe 300 meters long. Its hull was made of some kind of metal alloy that their sensors couldn't identify. The power readings were strange too, showing technology they had never seen before. "How many ships are in their fleet?" asked Zix Thala. "Just one, Admiral." "A single vessel." The Admiral's thin lips curved into what passed for a smile among his species. "One ship? Are they explorers or refugees?" "Unknown, sir. They haven't responded to our standard communication attempts. The ship is just sitting there at the edge of the system, not moving." Zix Thala handed back the data pad. "Send Patrol Fleet 7 to investigate. Standard first contact procedures. If they refuse to submit to hegemony authority, we'll show them what happens to species who don't understand their place in the galaxy." The commander saluted and walked away to carry out the orders. Zix Thala turned back to the viewing port, already dismissing the incident from his mind. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had encountered hundreds of new species. The pattern was always the same. First, they would try to communicate. The aliens would be curious, maybe even friendly. Then would come the demands for submission. Some species tried to negotiate. Others attempted to fight with their primitive weapons. A few tried to run away. But in the end, they all surrendered when they saw the true power of HFY technology. The hegemony's military doctrine was simple and effective. They built ships so large and powerful that resistance seemed hopeless. Their weapons could crack planets, and their shields could withstand anything the galaxy's peaceful species could throw at them. Most importantly, they had numbers. The hegemony fleet contained over 50,000 warships, from small patrol vessels to massive dreadnoughts like the Void Render. What made the HFY so successful wasn't just their technology, it was their understanding of psychology. When a primitive species saw a HFY fleet appear in their sky, they understood immediately that resistance was futile. The sight of ships kilometers long, bristling with weapons, was usually enough to end any thoughts of fighting. Hours passed as the Void Render continued its patrol of the core systems. Zix Thala reviewed reports from across the Empire. Sector 12 had discovered a new species that mined rare crystals. They had submitted without a fight after seeing just one HFY destroyer. Sector 33 was dealing with a small rebellion, but 3 heavy cruisers had ended that problem quickly. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Hicks Dana from her station. "We're receiving a transmission from Patrol Fleet 7. Put it through." Captain Nexvola's image appeared on the main screen. He was young for a fleet captain, with the bright purple skin that marked him as coming from the military caste. Behind him, Zix Thala could see the bridge of a standard patrol cruiser. "Admiral, we've made contact with the unknown vessel. They called themselves humans and claimed to be from a planet called Earth. The ship is designated UES Defiance. What do they want?" "They say they're explorers, sir. They've been studying our transmissions and learned our language. The ship's captain, a female called Sarah Chen, seems willing to talk." Zix Thala nodded. This was normal. Most species were eager to communicate once they realized they weren't alone in the galaxy. "What did you tell them?" "Standard protocol, sir. We explained about the hegemony and offered them the chance to join our empire. They would become a protectorate species, with full rights and protection under hegemony law." "And their response?" Captain Nexavola's expression changed slightly. They refused, Admiral. The human captain said they don't recognize any authority over their territory. She asked us to leave their space immediately. For a moment, Zixthala was surprised. It had been decades since any species had outright refused the hegemony's offer. Usually, even the most stubborn aliens would at least try to negotiate terms. Did you explain the consequences of refusal? Yes, sir. I showed them tactical displays of our fleet capabilities. I made it clear that resistance would result in their destruction. The human captain just stared at the screen for a long time, then said something strange. What did she say? She said, "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Then she cut the communication link. Zixthala felt a small flicker of annoyance. Arrogant primitives were always the most troublesome. They never seemed to understand the reality of their situation until it was too late. How large is their vessel compared to your ships? Much smaller, sir. Our smallest escort frigate is twice the size of their entire ship. Whatever weapons they have can't possibly threaten our shields. Very well. Give them one solar cycle to reconsider. If they don't surrender by then, destroy them. Make sure you record everything. The other species in that sector need to see what happens to those who defy the hegemony. Understood, Admiral. The transmission ended, and Zixthala turned back to his duties. Soon there would be one more species added to the hegemony's vast empire. The humans would learn, as all species eventually did, that resistance was pointless. What the Admiral didn't know was that halfway across the galaxy, other human ships were watching, waiting, and learning. The crew of the Defiance wasn't just exploring. They were testing. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Keth of our hegemony was about to encounter a species that understood war better than they did. The humans had been preparing for this moment for generations. They had studied the galaxy from the shadows, learning about every major power, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine. Now it was time to see if their preparations were enough. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the alien fleet surrounding her ship. 12 vessels, all larger than hers, all armed with weapons that could destroy cities. Any sane person would surrender immediately, but humans had stopped being sane about war a very long time ago. All hands, she announced over the ship's communication system. This is the captain. Prepare for combat operations. Show them what humanity has learned about fighting. The galaxy was about to get its first lesson in human warfare. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Defiance's bridge, watching the tactical display that showed 12 alien ships positioned around her vessel. Each enemy ship was marked with red symbols indicating their weapons and shield strength. The numbers didn't look good for humanity's side. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the communications station, "the alien fleet is maintaining position at 20,000 kilometers. No change in their formation for the past 6 hours." Sarah nodded, studying the enemy ships through the main view screen. The alien vessels were impressive, she had to admit. Long, sleek designs with hull plating that seemed to absorb light. Their lead ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Defiance. She could see weapon ports along its hull that could probably level a city. "Any response to our diplomatic channels?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. They've gone silent since yesterday's communication. I think they're waiting for us to surrender." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were some of Earth's finest military personnel, chosen for this mission because of their experience and skill. Most of them had served in the Sol Defense Force during the Mars Rebellion. They knew what real combat looked like. "Captain Chen," called Science Officer Park from his station, "I've finished analyzing the enemy weapons and shield systems. Their technology is definitely advanced, but it's built around energy-based warfare. Plasma cannons, particle beams, deflector shields designed to stop directed energy attacks. What about kinetic weapons? That's the interesting part, ma'am. Their shields seem optimized to stop energy weapons, but I'm not seeing any specific defenses against physical projectiles. It's like they've never encountered ballistic weapons before." Sarah felt a small smile cross her face. Humanity had been fighting wars with rocks, spears, bullets, and bombs for thousands of years before they ever developed energy weapons. Even now, Earth's military doctrine included kinetic weapons as a primary offensive system. "Tactical assessment, Mr. Thompson?" Commander Thompson looked up from the weapons console. 12 ships total. 1 dreadnought, 4 heavy cruisers, 7 escort frigates. Based on their formation, they're using standard intimidation tactics. They want us to see how outnumbered we are. "What they don't realize," said Rodriguez quietly, is that we've been outnumbered before. That was true. The Defiance carried the complete military history of humanity in its databases. Every war, every battle, every tactical innovation developed by a species that had been fighting itself for its entire existence. The ship's computer systems contained strategies from ancient Earth generals like Sun Tzu and Napoleon, combined with modern space combat doctrine developed in the asteroid belt conflicts. "Captain," announced the communications officer, "incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through." The main screen changed to show an alien face. Purple skin, large black eyes, and a thin mouth that seemed incapable of showing emotion. This was Captain Nex Vola of the Kethavar patrol fleet. "Human vessel Defiance," the alien said in accented but clear English. "This is your final warning. You have 1 hour to surrender and submit to hegemony authority. If you refuse, you will be destroyed. Your ship cannot stand against our fleet." Sarah stepped forward, making sure the alien could see her clearly. "Captain Nex Vola, I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. We are peaceful explorers operating in what you call neutral space. We have no intention of surrendering to your authority." "Then you choose destruction," replied the alien. "Your small ship cannot possibly threaten our vessels. We have conquered 1,000 worlds with fleets like this one." "You've conquered 1,000 peaceful worlds," Sarah corrected, "but you've never fought a species that evolved in constant warfare." The alien's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those large black eyes. "What do you mean?" "Every species you've encountered developed technology for exploration, trade, or scientific advancement. Humans developed technology to kill each other more efficiently. We've been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. Impossible. No species could survive constant warfare for so long." Sarah's smile was cold. "We didn't just survive it, Captain. We got very, very good at it." The communication ended abruptly. On the tactical display, the alien ships began to move into attack formation. "All hands battle stations," Sarah announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill. Prepare for combat operations." The bridge lights dimmed to red as the Defiance shifted to combat mode. Throughout the ship, 800 crew members moved to their assigned positions. In the weapons bays, crews loaded railgun projectiles and armed missile systems. In the engine room, technicians brought the fusion reactors to full power. "Enemy ships are powering weapons," reported Thompson. "Multiple target locks detected." "Defensive systems online," called out the tactical officer. "Point defense grid active. Electronic countermeasures ready." Sarah took her position in the captain's chair, watching the enemy formations spread out to surround them. The aliens were using textbook encirclement tactics. Exactly what she would expect from a species that had spent centuries fighting opponents who followed predictable patterns. "Captain," said Park from the science station, "I'm detecting some kind of scanning beam from the lead ship. They're analyzing our hull composition and internal structure." "Let them look," Sarah replied. "They won't understand what they're seeing anyway." The Defiance was built using lessons learned from centuries of human conflict. Its hull was layered with reactive armor that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. The internal structure was compartmentalized, so that damage to one section wouldn't cripple the entire ship. Most importantly, every system had multiple backups and redundancies. "Incoming transmission," announced Rodriguez. "Put it through." Captain Nex Vola appeared on screen again. "Human Captain, our scans show that your vessel is armed with primitive kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. These cannot penetrate our shields. Surrender now, and your crew will be spared." "Captain," Sarah said calmly, "you're making the same mistake that everyone makes when they first encounter humanity. You're assuming that because our weapons are simple, they're not effective. Your projectile weapons cannot harm our ships. We'll see about that." Sarah turned to her weapons officer. "Mr. Thompson, paint the smallest escort frigate with our targeting systems. Let them see that we're aiming at them." "Target locked, Captain." On the screen, the alien captain's eyes widened slightly as his sensors detected the targeting lock. "You cannot be serious. Your weapons are useless against our shields." "Captain Nex Vola, let me explain something about human military philosophy. We don't build weapons to impress our enemies. We build them to kill our enemies. There's a difference." The alien's mouth opened as if to reply, but Sarah cut the communication link. "All ships are in attack position," reported Thompson. "Enemy weapons are charged and ready to fire." Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These men and women had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not return home. They represented the best of humanity's military tradition: courage, skill, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly, "we are about to make first contact with a galactic empire that has never encountered real opposition. Today they're going to learn why humanity survived when so many other species destroyed themselves." "Ready for combat, Captain," reported Thompson. Sarah nodded. "All stations report ready." One by one, each department confirmed their readiness for battle. "Weapons loaded, shields up, damage control team standing by." "Captain," called the communications officer, "the alien fleet is moving into final attack position. I'm reading massive power buildup from their weapon systems." Sarah stood up from her chair and walked to the front of the bridge, facing the main view screen that showed the enemy fleet. 12 ships against 1. Thousands of alien crew members against 800 humans. The odds were about what humanity was used to. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah's voice carried across space to the alien fleet. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. You have threatened a human vessel and demanded our surrender. We decline your offer." She paused, letting that sink in. "You are about to learn why humans rule their home system not through peace, but through superior firepower. You wanted to see what human weapons can do. You're about to get a demonstration." The channel closed. On the tactical display, the alien weapons reached full charge. "Enemy. Fleet opening fire," reported Thompson. "Here we go," whispered Sarah. The galaxy's most peaceful empire was about to discover what happened when they picked a fight with its most violent species. The first volley from the Kethvar fleet lit up space like a miniature star. 12 ships fired at once, sending streams of plasma energy racing toward the small human vessel. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a city, more than sufficient to vaporize any normal spacecraft. Captain Nexvola watched from his bridge as the energy beams struck the human ship. This was always his favorite part of a battle, the moment when primitive aliens realized how hopeless their situation was. He expected to see the Defiance break apart under the assault. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship absorbed the plasma fire without taking any apparent damage. "Report," Nexvola snapped at his weapons officer. "Direct hits on target, sir, but their hull is still intact. Energy readings show minimal damage." On the main screen, the human vessel seemed unchanged. Its hull glowed briefly where the plasma beams had struck, but the metal seemed to actually absorb the energy instead of melting under it. "Impossible," muttered the science officer. "No known material can withstand that level of plasma bombardment." What the aliens didn't understand was that human engineers had spent centuries developing armor, specifically designed to defeat energy weapons. The Defiance's hull was covered in reactive plating that converted incoming energy into heat and electricity, then channeled that power into the ship's own systems. Every plasma bolt that hit them actually made them stronger. Captain Chen stood on her bridge watching the tactical display as the enemy weapons struck her ship. The hull temperature readings showed hotspots where the plasma had hit, but the reactive armor was working exactly as designed. "Damage report," she called out. "Minor surface heating on deck 7 through 12, reported the damage control officer. Reactive armor absorbed 97% of incoming energy. No hull breaches, no casualties. Their weapons are designed to fight ships with normal armor," observed Science Officer Park. "They've probably never encountered reactive plating before." Sarah nodded. The galaxy's peaceful species had developed defenses against energy weapons by building stronger shields. Humans had taken a different approach. Instead of trying to stop the energy, they learned to use it. "Captain," called Thompson from weapons, "enemy ships are repositioning for another attack. They're increasing power to their plasma cannons." "Let them waste their energy," Sarah replied. "Mr. Park, have you finished analyzing their shield frequencies?" "Yes, ma'am. Their deflector shields are designed to stop directed energy attacks and charged particles, but they're not calibrated for physical objects moving at high velocity." Sarah smiled. "Perfect. Mr. Thompson, load railgun batteries with kinetic penetrator rounds. Target the smallest escort frigate." "Kinetic rounds loaded, Captain." "Target locked." The aliens fired again, this time with 50% more power. The plasma beams struck the Defiance with enough energy to melt a mountain, but once again the human ship shrugged off the attack. Captain Nexvola stared in disbelief as his most powerful weapons failed to even scratch the enemy hull. "Sir," called his communications officer, "the human ship is powering up some kind of weapon system. Energy signature doesn't match anything in our databases." "What kind of weapon?" "Unknown, sir. It appears to be magnetic in nature, with a massive power draw from their reactor." Nexvola had never heard of a magnetic weapon. His species had developed beyond such primitive technologies thousands of years ago. What possible threat could an ancient magnetic system pose to modern starships? He was about to find out. "Fire," ordered Captain Chen. The Defiance's main railgun discharged with a sound like thunder, a solid metal projectile, accelerated to 15% of light speed, shot across the 20,000 kilometers between the human ship and the alien fleet in less than a second. The kinetic penetrator struck the Kethvar escort frigate dead center. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy beams, offered no resistance to a physical object moving at relativistic speeds. The projectile punched through the shield barrier as if it didn't exist. What happened next defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space combat. The kinetic round hit the frigate's hull and kept going, tearing through armor plating, bulkheads, and internal structure like paper. The ship's entire midsection simply disintegrated as the hypersonic projectile transferred its massive kinetic energy into the target. The frigate broke in half, its two pieces spinning away from each other in a cloud of debris and atmosphere. In the space of 1 second, a weapon the aliens considered primitive had destroyed a warship that had taken years to build. "Impossible," whispered Captain Nexvola, staring at the wreckage on his screen. His weapons officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, their projectile completely bypassed our shields. It's like our defenses weren't even there." "How fast was that object moving?" "Approximately 15% of light speed, sir. I've never seen anything accelerated to that velocity before." Captain Chen watched the destroyed alien ship on her tactical display. The railgun had performed exactly as designed, proving that kinetic weapons could be just as devastating as any energy beam. "Reload railgun batteries," she ordered. "Target the next escort frigate." "Captain," interrupted Rodriguez from communications. "Incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Multiple channels, all ships. Let's hear what they have to say." Captain Nexvola's face appeared on screen, and for the first time he looked genuinely shaken. "Human vessels, cease fire immediately. How did you penetrate our shields?" "Simple physics, Captain," Sarah replied calmly. "Your shields stop energy. They don't stop matter moving at high velocity. We learned that lesson fighting each other in our home system. But the speed of that projectile, how do you accelerate solid matter to such velocities? Magnetic fields and lots of power. We call it a railgun. The concept is about 300 years old by our standards." The alien captain's expression showed confusion and growing fear. "You're using ancient weapons technology?" "We never stopped using kinetic weapons, Captain. Energy beams are useful, but sometimes you need to hit something very, very hard. Humans are good at hitting things hard." "Sir," called out Thompson, "second railgun is loaded and ready." "You see, Captain Nexvola," Sarah continued, "your species developed advanced technology and assumed that made older weapons obsolete. Humans kept improving everything. We made kinetic weapons faster, more accurate, and more powerful. On the alien bridge, panic was starting to set in. The tactical officer was shouting reports about the human ship's weapon systems. "Sir, they have multiple magnetic accelerators. I'm reading at least 6 separate railgun batteries." Captain Nexvola looked back at the screen. "Surely you don't intend to fight our entire fleet with primitive weapons?" Sarah's smile was cold. "Captain, you're still not understanding. These aren't primitive weapons. These are weapons perfected by a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill efficiently." "Fire," she ordered. The second railgun discharged, sending another kinetic penetrator screaming across space. This time the aliens tried to evade, but their ships were too large and slow to avoid a projectile moving at relativistic speeds. The round struck another escort frigate, punching through its hull and reactor core. The ship exploded in a ball of plasma as its power systems overloaded. "2 ships down," reported Thompson. "Remaining enemy vessels are trying to close range." "They think getting closer will help them," observed Park from the science station. "They don't realize that it just makes them easier targets." Captain Chen watched the alien fleet adjust their formation. The larger ships were moving forward while the remaining escorts spread out to present multiple targets. It was a sound tactical decision against conventional weapons. It was also exactly what she had expected them to do. "Mr. Thompson, Do we have a clear shot at the lead cruiser? Yes, ma'am. Range is 15,000 kilometers in closing. Load armor-piercing rounds and target their bridge section. The aliens were learning, but they were learning the wrong lessons. They thought the human weapons were just very fast projectiles. They didn't understand that human engineers had developed dozens of different types of kinetic ammunition, each designed for specific targets. Sir, called the Kethvar weapons officer, their magnetic weapon is powering up again. Captain Nexvola gripped his command chair. All ships evasive maneuvers. Don't let them target you. But the human ship wasn't aiming at the ships that were moving. It was aiming at the heavy cruiser that was trying to line up its own shot. The massive alien vessel was too large to change course quickly, making it a perfect target for the Defiance's most powerful railgun. Fire, said Captain Chen. The armor-piercing round struck the cruiser's command section with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The projectile was designed to penetrate multiple layers of armor before exploding, and it performed perfectly. The cruiser's bridge and forward weapon systems vanished in a flash of expanding metal and atmosphere. The wounded ship spun out of control, its remaining crew struggling to regain stability. On the screens throughout the alien fleet, Kethvar officers watched in horror as their supposedly invincible warships were picked apart by weapons they had dismissed as obsolete. Captain, reported the communications officer, the alien fleet is requesting a ceasefire. Captain Nexvola watched his fleet fall apart around him. 3 ships destroyed in as many minutes, and the human vessel seemed completely undamaged. Nothing in his military training had prepared him for this situation. The Kethvar military doctrine was built on overwhelming force and technological superiority, but those advantages meant nothing when the enemy refused to follow the rules. Sir, called his tactical officer, voice shaking with fear, the human ship is deploying some kind of smaller craft. Sensors show hundreds of small objects launching from their hull. On the main screen, tiny points of light were spreading out from the Defiance like a swarm of insects. Each object was barely larger than a fighter craft, but there were so many of them that they filled the space between the 2 fleets. What are they? Demanded Nexvola. Unknown, sir. They're too small for our targeting systems to lock onto effectively. Each one has its own power source and appears to be independently controlled. Captain Chen watched the deployment of her drone swarms with satisfaction. Each drone was the size of a small car, packed with enough intelligence to think and adapt faster than any organic crew. Some carried explosive charges, others electronic warfare packages, and still others were designed purely to confuse enemy sensors. Drone deployment complete, reported Thompson. 800 units active and responding to commands. What's their tactical assessment? Enemy ships are clustering together in a defensive formation. Their point defense systems are trying to target our drones, but they're having trouble with the small target sizes and electronic countermeasures. Sarah nodded. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond the simple ship-to-ship combat that dominated the galaxy. Earth's wars had taught them to think in terms of swarm tactics, where hundreds of small units could overwhelm even the largest enemy. Begin harassment pattern Alpha, she ordered. I want their attention divided between our drones and our main weapons. The drone swarms moved in perfect coordination, surrounding the alien fleet like a cloud of angry hornets. The drones were too small and fast for the Kethvar's heavy weapons to target effectively, but each one carried enough firepower to damage critical systems. Captain Nexvola watched in growing horror as the small human craft began attacking his ships from every direction at once. His gunners were firing wildly, trying to hit targets that moved like living things and seemed to predict where his weapons would fire. Sir, the small craft are targeting our sensor arrays and communication systems. Destroy them. We're trying, sir, but there are too many. Every time we shoot down one, 3 more take its place. The Kethvar had never encountered drone warfare before. Their battles were fought between large ships with predictable weapons and movements. The concept of hundreds of small, intelligent machines working together was completely outside their experience. Captain, called Thompson from the weapons station, enemy formation is starting to break up. The drones are forcing them to spread out to avoid concentrated attacks. Perfect, replied Sarah. Isolated targets are easier to destroy. Mr. Park, are you still monitoring their communication frequencies? Yes, ma'am. Their tactical coordination is breaking down. Individual ship captains are starting to act independently instead of following fleet orders. This was exactly what human strategists had predicted would happen. Species that had never faced real opposition would panic when confronted with tactics they didn't understand. The Kethvar were learning that superior technology meant nothing without superior tactics. "Sir," shouted the Kethvar science officer, "one of their drones just attached itself to our hull." Captain Nexvola spun around. "What?" "External sensors show a small craft clamped to our outer armor, approximately 2 meters from the main reactor housing. It appears to be cutting through the hull plating." "Destroy it!" "We can't target it with our weapons, sir. It's too close to our own ship." Before Nexvola could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his vessel. The human drone had burned through the outer hull and was now inside the ship, moving through the corridors like a small tank. "Security teams to Deck 15, he ordered. "Stop that thing before it reaches critical systems." But the drone wasn't heading for critical systems. It was heading for the ship's internal communication network. Once there, it began transmitting a virus designed to crash the vessel's computer systems. Within minutes, the heavy cruiser's tactical displays went dark. "Sir, we've lost internal communications. The computer virus is spreading through our entire network." Captain Chen smiled as she watched the enemy cruiser go dark on her tactical display. "Electronic warfare drone has successfully penetrated enemy systems. Target vessel is now effectively blind." "Shall I finish them off with a railgun strike?" asked Thompson. "Not yet."
"I want them alive to report what they've seen."
"But let's make sure they understand the lesson." She turned to the communication station. "Open a channel to the lead alien ship." Captain Nexvola's face appeared on screen, but this time he looked desperate rather than confident. Behind him, his bridge crew was working frantically to restore their ship's systems. "Human captain," he said, "call off your attack. We surrender." "Do you?" asked Sarah calmly. "Your ships are still powered up and armed. That doesn't look like surrender to me. Our weapons are defensive only." "We won't fire on your vessel." "Captain Nexvola, let me explain something about human warfare. We don't just fight to win battles. We fight to make sure our enemies never want to fight us again." On the tactical display, Sarah could see the remaining alien ships trying to regroup. Their formation was ragged, with several vessels showing battle damage from the drone attacks. Most importantly, their morale was broken. "You came here expecting to fight primitives with simple weapons," she continued. "Instead, you found a species that has spent millennia perfecting the art of destruction. Every weapon we carry, every tactic we use was developed by fighting opponents just as intelligent and determined as ourselves." "We understand," Nexvola replied quickly. "We'll withdraw from this system immediately. Will you? Or will you just bring a bigger fleet next time?" The alien captain's expression showed confusion. "What do you mean?" Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "I mean that this is just the beginning, Captain. This ship, these weapons, these tactics, when we have thousands more just like them. The Kethvar hegemony rules through fear and superior technology. But what happens when you meet a species that isn't afraid and has better technology? That's impossible. No species in the galaxy has technology superior to ours." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "No species in the galaxy does. But humans aren't from this galaxy, are they?" She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "We've been watching your empire for 50 years, Captain. Studying your ships, learning your tactics, preparing for this moment. Every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, every battle you've fought. We've analyzed it all." The alien's face went pale. "You've been spying on us?" "We've been preparing. The question now is what happens next. You can report back to your superiors that humanity is just another primitive species that got lucky. Or you can tell them the truth." "What truth?" Sarah stood up and her voice took on a harder edge. "That humanity has come to this galaxy not as refugees or explorers, but as conquerors. That every assumption your empire has made about warfare is wrong. That the age of Kethvar dominance is over." Captain Nexvola stared at the screen in growing horror. "You're threatening to invade our territory?" "I'm explaining reality, Captain. Your empire controls 10,000 systems through fear and overwhelming force. But you've never faced an enemy that understands fear better than you do, and has more overwhelming force." She gestured to her tactical display, which showed the current battle situation. One human ship had destroyed or disabled multiple alien vessels without taking any significant damage. "This isn't our most powerful warship, Captain. This is a light exploration cruiser on its maiden voyage. Our actual battle fleet is significantly more impressive." The alien captain's voice was barely a whisper. "How many ships do you have?" Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Enough. The communication ended, leaving Captain Nexvola staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew worked desperately to restore their ship's systems, while fighting off the human drones that continued to swarm through their corridors. For the first time in 3,000 years, the HFY hegemony had encountered a species that was not afraid of them. Worse, they had encountered a species that was better at warfare than they were. "Sir," called the communications officer, "incoming transmission from Admiral Zixthala. He's demanding a full report on our engagement." Nexvola looked around his damaged bridge, at the tactical display showing human drones still attacking his fleet, at the wreckage of ships that had been destroyed by weapons his people considered primitive. How could he possibly explain that everything the hegemony believed about military superiority was wrong? How could he tell the Admiral that they had just met their match? "Prepare a full tactical report," he ordered quietly. "Include everything. Fleet composition, weapon capabilities, tactical doctrine, everything. Sir, should I recommend reinforcements?" Captain Nexvola thought about the human captain's words, about the implication that this was just one ship from a much larger fleet. Fleet Admiral Zixthala stood before the holographic display in his command center, studying the tactical report from Captain Nexvola's engagement with devastating clarity. Around him, his senior staff worked in unusual silence, their forearms moving quickly across control panels as they tried to process what they were seeing. The report was impossible to believe, yet the evidence was undeniable. Ship debris matched HFY alloys. Energy signatures confirmed the destruction of 3 vessels. Most disturbing of all, the recordings showed weapons and tactics completely outside their understanding of galactic warfare. "Admiral," said his chief of staff, "Commander Velthar, I've analyzed the human weapons data 3 times. Their kinetic projectiles achieved velocities we thought were impossible for solid matter. What about their defensive capabilities? Even more troubling, sir. Their hull absorbed our plasma weapons without significant damage. It's as if they were designed specifically to counter our technology." Zixthala studied the tactical recordings again, watching the human drones swarm around HFY ships like living creatures. In 3,000 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like it. What does intelligence say about these humans? That's the problem, Admiral. We have no data on them before yesterday. They appeared in our territory without warning. With technology we don't understand, using tactics we've never encountered. The Admiral walked to the viewing port and stared out at the stars. The HFY hegemony had been built on the simple principle that superior technology and overwhelming force could defeat any opposition. But what happened when they met an enemy with superior technology and tactics? "Sir," called the communications officer, "incoming priority transmission from the Outer Rim. It's Captain Nexvola." "Put him through." Captain Nexvola's image appeared on the main screen, and Zixthala was shocked by what he saw. The young captain looked like he had aged years in the past few hours. His uniform was torn, his skin was pale, and his eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen something terrible. "Admiral," Nexvola said quietly, "I'm sending you the complete tactical analysis of our engagement with the human vessel. But there's something else you need to know." "What is it, Captain?" "The human captain, Sarah Chen, gave me a message for you personally." Zixthala felt a chill run down his spine. "What message?" "She said to tell you that humanity has been watching the hegemony for 50 years. Studying our ships, learning our tactics, preparing for this moment. She said this engagement was just a test." "A test of what?" "Of our capabilities, sir. She implied that they have much larger fleets and more powerful weapons. Admiral, I don't think we're dealing with a single ship from a primitive species. I think we're dealing with an invasion force." The command center fell silent. Every officer present understood the implications. If the humans had been preparing for 50 years, if they had fleets more powerful than what they had already seen, then the hegemony was facing its first real threat in 3 millennia. "Admiral," said the tactical officer, "if their capabilities scale with their fleet size, we could be looking at a military force that outmatches our entire navy." Zixthala nodded slowly. He had reached the same conclusion. "What's the current status of Captain Nexvola's fleet?" 3 ships destroyed, 2 heavily damaged, the rest showing moderate damage from those drone attacks. The human vessel withdrew after delivering their message, but our ships are barely combat capable." "And the human ship?" "No damage reported, sir." "None at all." Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars stream past as they jumped to hyperspace. The engagement with the HFY fleet had gone exactly as planned. Better, actually. The aliens had reacted predictably to every tactic, proving that their military doctrine was as outdated as Earth Command had suspected. "Captain," said Rodriguez from communications, "we're receiving transmissions from the other ships in our fleet. They're requesting status updates on the engagement. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. We have all the tactical data we need about Kethvar capabilities." Sarah walked to the tactical station where Thompson was reviewing the battle recordings. "What's your assessment, Commander?" "Honestly, Captain, they're not as advanced as we thought. Their technology is impressive, but it's designed for fighting other peaceful species. Their shields can't stop kinetic weapons. Their tactics assume the enemy will fight conventionally, and they have no experience with electronic warfare. What about their numbers advantage? Won't matter if we can neutralize their ships as quickly as we did today. A dozen railgun rounds could probably take out one of their dreadnoughts." Sarah nodded. The human fleet had been designed specifically to counter everything they had learned about galactic military technology. While other species had focused on energy weapons and traditional ship-to-ship combat, humans had continued developing the tools of war they understood best: kinetic weapons, electronic warfare, and swarm tactics. "Mr. Park," she called to the science officer, "how long until we reach the rendezvous point?" 6 hours, Captain. The rest of the fleet should be waiting for us." The rest of the fleet. Sarah smiled at the thought. 50 ships, each one designed using lessons learned from centuries of human warfare. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels, all carrying weapons the galaxy had never seen before. "Captain," said Rodriguez, "incoming transmission from Admiral Morrison aboard the Endeavour." "Put it through." Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared on screen. He was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion and the Europa campaign, one of Earth's most experienced fleet commanders. "Sarah," he said with a slight smile, "I take it the field test went well?" "Better than expected, Admiral." The Kethvar military doctrine is exactly what our analysts predicted. They're completely unprepared for asymmetric warfare. Casualties? None on our side. We disabled 3 of their ships and sent the rest limping home with a message. Morrison nodded approvingly. "Good work. How long do you think it will take them to realize what they're really facing?" "Based on their reaction patterns, I'd say they already know they're in trouble. The question is whether they'll try to negotiate or fight. What do you think they'll choose?" Sarah thought about Captain Nexavola's expression when she had explained that humanity was not just another primitive species. The fear in his eyes, the way his crew had panicked when faced with tactics they didn't understand. "They'll fight, Admiral. Their entire empire is built on military dominance. They can't afford to show weakness even when they're clearly outmatched. Then we'll give them the war they want. Are you ready for Phase 2? "Yes, sir." "The Defiance is ready to proceed to the next target system." "Excellent. Remember, Sarah, this isn't just about defeating the Kethvar. This is about sending a message to every species in this galaxy. Humanity is here, and we're not going to ask permission to take our place among the stars." The transmission ended, and Sarah returned to her captain's chair. Through the view screen, she could see the swirling colors of hyperspace as they traveled toward their next destination. The Kethvar hegemony had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology for 3,000 years. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that all species would develop along the same peaceful lines they had. Humanity was different. Humans had evolved in constant warfare, developing not just technology but an understanding of conflict that went beyond anything the peaceful galaxy could imagine. They had learned to weaponize everything from mathematics to psychology, turning war itself into a science. More importantly, humans understood something the Kethvar did not: that true victory didn't come from destroying your enemies, but from making them understand that resistance was hopeless. Fleet Admiral Zix Thala was about to receive an education in human military philosophy. Over the next few months, human fleets would systematically dismantle Kethvar military installations, using tactics the aliens couldn't counter and weapons they couldn't defend against. But they would always leave survivors, witnesses, people who could report back to the hegemony leadership and explain exactly what they were facing. "Captain," Chen smiled as she thought about the message those survivors would carry. Humanity had not come to this galaxy as refugees or explorers. They had come as conquerors, armed with 3,000 years of military evolution and the absolute certainty that they were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. The age of peaceful expansion was over. The age of human dominance had begun, And somewhere in the depths of space, a fleet of 50 human warships moved toward their next target, ready to demonstrate once again that in the mathematics of warfare, humans had already solved for victory. The galaxy would learn to fear a new name: humanity. And they would learn that when humans said peace, they meant surrender.